Welcome to my channel people. Author link will be on description, make sure to check it out. Inside the mountain of trees and flowers, two identical figures were glaring at each other with cold looks in their eyes. They were of course Bakurio and the special clone. It has already been 3 full days and nights and I have yet to find a way to beat myself, muttered Bakurio with a little bit of helplessness in his tone. He truly felt like he was dealing with something impossible. The only good thing he gained from all of this is that his true fighter mastery was advancing rapidly. This was thanks to the constant fighting with someone that matched him in strength, as well as the fact that his clone was improving at a rapid rate in all of his skills and masteries, and Bakurio ended up copying and learning from it. I wonder who's the clone here? He thought before he decided to change his perspective on this matter. These monkeys are sneaky, they won't create an impossible trial. There's definitely a trick to this, just like the other trials. Bakurio was sure of this, so he decided to stop trying to stomp his way through this caveman style and started observing and analyzing all the information he gathered during these 3 days. This is the trial of the self, and they said I should beat myself to pass this test. But beating oneself can mean many things. Bakurio's eyes suddenly narrowed. Indeed, this test was never intended to be a physical test. This clone was somehow granted all of the person's ability with some sort of ability which is already heaven-defying, and it could even improve faster than them. This miraculous ability is so perfect to the point that it even copied my personality. Bakurio had a heavy look on his face since he didn't enjoy the fact that these monkeys probably have an idea on many of his trump cards now. I will go back in time if I confirm that to be the case, he thought before he turned to recovered clone that was smirking at him coldly and said, "You are indeed strong, a copy that surpasses the original, how ingenious. However, there's one thing that couldn't be copied, and that's my soul." Although Bakurio realized that this test could be beaten through some sort of trick, he decided to try one more time to end it directly. Meanwhile, somewhere in the mountain of flowers and fruits, 4 monkeys were facing each other while watching a crystal mirror that reflected Bakurio's fight with his clone. "Wisdom Sage, do you think he can beat this trial?" asked Crimson Sage, who was the sage of the Red Monkey tribe. The Wisdom Sage, the sage of the Stone Monkey tribe, stroked his white beard silently before he said, "I think he will surprise us once more." The other 3 sages were surprised since they didn't expect such a thing, especially when they saw Bakurio's fruitless efforts these past 3 days. The Perception Sage, the sage of the 4-eared monkey tribe, glanced at Bakurio on the screen silently before he said, "We will have to stop this test soon. He's consuming too much energy from our sky stone." The other 3 nodded their heads and turned their attention back to the fight, but their hearts suddenly shook as all of them felt a chill running down their spines and all of their furs stood up when they stared into Bakurio's eyes that suddenly turned empty and cold. Back at the fight, Bakurio decided to test his last resort, use the only thing that couldn't be copied, and that's his soul. The way he decided to do that was by unleashing the emptiness which he sealed during his time at the trial of the Dragon Palace. The moment he did, intense negative energy gushed out of his body and threatened to swallow anyone that approaches him whole. "You had every advantage of mine, but how could they guess that my biggest weakness is also a type of strength?" muttered Bakurio as he approached the clone step by step, and the latter instantly entered into tortoise sage mode when he felt the danger approaching him. "Have a taste of what it means to be me," said Bakurio with a smile that didn't reach his empty eyes as he raised his hand and channeled the terrifying amount of dark chakra he was accumulating and transformed it into a giant dark Rasengan. "Die," he said as he watched his clones using all kinds of defensive jutsu to protect himself, yet he was barely able to defend, and he survived all thanks to a tortoise shell made of tortoise sage chakra protecting him. However, it had huge cracks running through it after withstanding the devastating attack. "Oh, you still won't give up? Fine, how about 2 then?" said Bakurio with the same smile still plastered on his face as he created 2 giant dark Rasengans this time and launched them at the clone. Meanwhile, inside the hidden room, the 4 great monkey sages fell silent as they watched this before long-armed monkey sage slammed the table that was between them and said, "That kid dares to use that filthy chakra in our territory. It seems like he doesn't care about living anymore." This sage had terrifying killing intent emanating from his body and was about to make his way to Bakurio, only to end up being stopped by the Wisdom Sage, who said, "That boy isn't our enemy. He's going to be a huge helper for when we fight the darkness, so calm down Kudai. Kudai glared at Bakuryo's figure inside the mirror before he sat back down, showing just how great of an authority the wisdom sage held over the other three. Then, they simply watched as Bakuryo kept bombarding the clone with his almost endless supply of dark chakra before he stopped and stared at the four-eared Monkey King that approached him to congratulate him with a shocked look on his face that he wasn't able to hide. Congratulations, you have passed the trial of self. Would you like to have some rest? Or would you like to continue the trials? Asked Renma, and Yuki calmly said, I want to keep going. Hearing this, Renma nodded at him and led him to the location of the final test, and it would be held in the territory of the stone monkeys. Along the way, he couldn't help but ask him, you seem to have realized during the fight that it wasn't about fighting your clone head-on, if I may ask. Why did you choose to change your mind? Hearing this question, Bakuryo felt silent for a bit before he said, I don't like the fact that my powers and talents were easily copied, so I wanted to make sure that the thing that made me unique can never be copied, that's all. I wanted to confirm that I'm not simply a copy of my true self. Renma was shocked by Bakuryo's response as it was completely out of his expectations. He thought the young man in front of him will just say something like I wanted to prove myself. But this is simply too out of his prediction range, and he couldn't even understand all of it. Of course he couldn't. How could he understand that Bakuryo was a reincarnated person? The last trial Bakuryo had to go through was the trial of skill, and this one was supervised by none other than the Monkey King Enma. Bakuryo-kun, I believe you already know what this test requires, but I will say it once more, said Enma, and Bakuryo nodded at him calmly in a gesture for him to continue. This test requires you to merge 3 chakra transformations of your choosing without relying on any Kekkei Genkei, said Enma, and Bakuryo nodded again at him and said, I understand. Then, he sat down cross-legged and started contemplating, my chakra control is already perfect, and so are my transformations. It's unfortunate that I can't use chakra merging on transformed chakra, thought Bakuryo before he decided on his best chance of succeeding quickly. It was a chakra transformation he tried to analyze before but failed miserably because of how complicated it was, and it was none other than dust release. Each chakra transformation has its own property. Fire can burn as well as be explosive. Wind can be both sharp and fast, lightning can paralyze and penetrate, and so on. To merge 2 or more types of chakra, the user must merge the suitable properties of these 2 to create a desirable effect, although it isn't this simple. Moreover, this is extremely difficult even for normal Kekkei Genkei that only require 2 types of chakra. After reaching this point of thinking, Bakuryo decided to take it slow and first merge 2 types of chakra perfectly before trying the more difficult task of merging 3. Let's try creating ice, thought Bakuryo before he started transforming his chakra into both water and wind before trying to merge them. Form didn't matter, he only wanted to achieve the transformation. However, once he was done, instead of an ice release, he simply ended up creating an extremely fast water projectile as if it was pressurized. The 2 chakra natures didn't merge but worked together instead. This is pretty good as it's at the level of someone like Hiruzen, but I need to achieve more than this, thought Bakuryo before he tried again. After 10 tries, he still ended up with the same effect, which made him frown slightly. Meanwhile, Enma was already shocked by Bakuryo's current level that matched Hiruzen, and he couldn't help but wonder what will happen when he fully grows up. I wish I had a Kekkei Genkei related to chakra transformation. This could have been much more easier when I have something as a reference to work with, thought Bakuryo before he closed his eye and contemplated what he was doing wrong while trying multiple solutions every time, but all of them failed, and this went on for a whole day before he realized something. Even merging only the suitable properties doesn't work, huh? What's going on? Bakuryo was truly confused since he was doing everything right, yet the result he wanted simply didn't happen. Indeed, this is why bloodlines are valuable. Mastery alone isn't enough to let someone surpass certain limitations. Wait, I've been trying to merge these 2 in equal quantities all this time. Maybe I should try it in different ratios this time, thought Bakuryo before he quickly put it to the test. After all, he only has 100 possibilities to try, so it wouldn't make him a lot. One after another, Bakuryo started testing, beginning with a 100 of wind to water ratio. Failure after failure was the result. However, when he reached the 70-30 ratio, he finally achieved his desired effect and an ice spike appeared above his hand. Finally, I did it, said Bakurio with a smile, and a system notification soon appeared in front of him signifying his success. Congratulations host, you have learned Ice Chakra Transformation. Nice, let's try unlocking other chakra transformations, muttered Bakurio, while the jaw of Enma who was observing him dropped to the floor from the shock. In just 2 days he already learned a Kekkei Genkai. What kind of talent is this? He was truly astonished, and so were the 4 monkey sages watching him through their magical mirror. After this, Bakurio spent a month learning each of the different Kekkei Genkai, and they went like this: water plus fire equals boil release water plus earth equals mud release water plus lightning equals storm release fire plus wind equals scorch release fire plus earth equals lava release fire plus lightning equals light release earth plus wind equals magnet release earth plus lightning equals explosion release wind plus lightning equals shock release. All of these were currently level 1 since he was focusing on learning all of them first, but he was still satisfied with his achievement. I was expecting gaining wood release after merging water and earth, I didn't expect it to turn out as mud release. Thought Bakurio, who just finished learning his last transformation, shock release. This one gave him the ability to create strong shockwaves mixed with lightning, as well as create and maintain cages made of lightning, which helps greatly to restrain his enemies. Then, he tried to level up his ice release, but he was surprised to find out that it required at least 4 times the effort to level it up compared to the basic chakra transformations. This is going to take me a lot, let's just focus on the ones needed for the dust release for now. That release is made from fire, wind, and earth. I will master the lava release first and try merging it with wind. If that doesn't work, I will try mastering all the combinations of these chakra natures, thought Bakurio before he began his training once more, and in no time at all, another month passed and his lava release reached level 100. Let's see if this is going to work, muttered Bakurio before he tried merging his now fully mastered lava release with his wind release. Failure after failure was encountered, not to mention that now, huge explosions occurred each time he fails, and they would even injure his strong body, sometimes making him furrow his brows in annoyance. Why do I keep failing? I tried every possible ratio and yet it still didn't work, thought Bakurio while staring at his bloody hands from the recent explosion he had to endure before using his restoration skill to heal them. Fine then, I will master all transformations, muttered Bakurio before he set off to master the scorch release and the magnet release as well. And just like that, 2 more months passed by quickly. Now I should be ready for this, thought Bakurio confidently before he started trying every possible combination with every possible ratio. Scorch release with earth, magnet release with fire, magnet release with scorch release, and so on. However, he would always end up with failures one after the other, which almost made him go crazy and burn the whole mountain of flowers and fruits to ashes. I will fucking find the secret to this jutsu no matter what, said Bakurio through his gritted teeth. However, his anger didn't change anything as his body kept sustaining bigger and bigger injuries before he heals it, and the only positive thing that came out of this was that his physical and vitality attributes along with his spirit were rising slowly. Wait, why am I complicating things? It was my speculation from the start that dust release is the combination of lava release with wind release. But what if I'm simply underestimating the ninja of this world? What if they are true geniuses that found a way to merge 3 chakra natures directly without needing to facilitate it through their Kekkei Genkai? Bakurio was suddenly hit by this realization, and he couldn't help but remember Minato's genius in seals and his affinity for space and Mukai's unhuman talent for taijutsu. What if someone had a similar talent for chakra? Wouldn't he be able to achieve a miracle like this? After getting his ego deflated, Bakurio focused once more. This time he planned on merging earth, wind, and fire just the way he did with his Kekkei Genkai. This is going to take a while, muttered Bakurio before he took a deep breath and started splitting his chakra into 3 parts and transforming it into wind, earth, and fire, respectively. Then he started mixing them at different ratios. For mixing 2 types of chakra, he only had to go through 100 possibilities. But now, he had to go through an enormous 10,000 possibility. He started from a ratio of 1:98, and it took him a whole day just to go through 100 possibilities and finish with a ratio of 1:98. However, all of them failed. Not to mention he had to rest from time to time since his hands kept becoming a mess from the explosions he had to endure. It seems like I'm going to spend a while here, muttered Bakurio with a sigh before staring at his reflection in a stream. It has already been more than 3 months since he entered this place. Naruto and Sasuke have probably already joined the ninja academy at this point. He felt bad for not meeting them for a long time, but he decided to take care of them after he's done with the huge mess hiding behind the curtains of the darkness of the world. Let's take it one step at a time, thought Bakurio before taking a rest to restore his chakra. He spent 2 more months, and during this time, the monkeys of this mountain started to get used to the continuous sounds of explosions. Now I understand why the use of Kekkei Genkai isn't allowed. That was probably the biggest hint those monikis gave to pass this test. It's impossible to achieve this result through Kekkei Genkai, and the person must mix the elements at their base form to succeed, muttered Bakurio with a grin on his face after reading a notification that appeared in front of him. Congratulations host on learning dust chakra transformation, let's test it out. Bakurio stretched his hands out and created a circular shape with them, and focused on transforming his chakra into dust particles. A white cube of light that had a sphere inside of it appeared in front of him, and he aimed it at a distant rock and launched it. The result was that rock transforming into nothing. This is the power of dust release. It could break the connections between atoms and transform an object into free particles. Hence its name, dust release. Right after this show of skill, the Monkey King Enma approached Bakurio and said nervously, "Please don't aim that recklessly." Bakurio chuckled at him and said, "Don't worry, I'm just testing it out, that's all." "Yes sure, I know what happens when you test your crazy ideas," replied Enma. They got close during these long months of interacting together, and after watching over Bakurio for this long, Enma wasn't even surprised that he succeeded. The kid in front of him was simply a monster. "Thankfully I found the correct ratio sooner and didn't have to spend 100 days here," said Bakurio, which made Enma glare at him. "People wish they could live in our sacred ground and you are saying you want to leave. Who would like to live in a place filled with monkeys throwing their poop at each other?" replied Bakurio, which made Enma freeze before he yelled, "They did it again. I will make sure to teach them a lesson later." Bakurio chuckled at him before he said, "So, when can I start learning sage arts?" Enma finally remembered his purpose here and said, "That's right, follow me, I will take you to the peak of the sages." Peak of the sages, huh? Thought Bakurio before shooting a look at the tallest peak of this mountain. This mountain had the shape of a hand, having 5 peaks in total. Each monkey tribe lived on one of the peaks, while the peak of the sage was the tallest one of them all, and only sages can live there. After following Enma, Bakurio found himself in front of a shrine, and surprisingly, the 3 statues he encountered during his previous tests were placed at each of the 4 corners of the shrine, and right now there was a 4th one as well that had a staff made of gems in his hands. "The sages are waiting for you, I won't accompany you any further," said Enma, and Bakurio nodded at him before he entered the giant shrine. Inside of it there were 4 giant thrones, and on each of them sat a sage of the monkey tribes. They were the Crimson Sage, the Wisdom Sage, the Perception Sage, and finally the Smiling Sage. "Young man, congratulations on successfully passing the trials in record time. Your talent truly leaves this old sage speechless," spoke the Wisdom Sage with a friendly smile. Although Bakurio noticed that not all the sages held the same level of friendliness toward him, especially the one from the long-armed tribe. The Smiling Sage. Bakurio clearly sensed through his Jikaninki the emotions of that guy, and they indicated that he couldn't wait to rip Bakurio's head off if he could. Interesting, he thought before he said, "Well, they are tough indeed, but I was lucky and managed to pass them." "No, luck was in no way involved. Although I appreciate your humbleness," spoke the Wisdom Sage once more as Bakurio frowned since he felt a weird sensation. His nature-related abilities were attracting him towards something, and it seemed to be hidden under this shrine. The Wisdom Sage, as if noticing this, spoke, "Is there something that bothers you inside our shrine before we finish the assessment?" Bakurio, feeling the friendliness from this monkey, decided to tell him the truth and said, "Not that it bothers me, I just feel like something with a very strong natural aura is around and I feel attracted to it." "Oh," exclaimed the Wisdom Sage, and the others had similar shocked expressions. After all, the only thing Bakurio could have sensed was the Sky Stone, but they made sure to hide it using so many formations that limited any leakage of its aura. Not to mention that only those who become true sages are told of its existence, so Bakurio knowing it means that he really felt attracted by it. What kind of affinities does this kid possesses? What a monster, thought the wisdom sage, who didn't know that Bakurio had an ability called One with Nature and another one called the Blessing of Nature, which granted him a great increase in his affinity toward natural things, and the Sky Stone was one of the rarest natural treasures, so Bakurio felt naturally attracted to it because of this. Could he be the kid of the prophecy that would ring down the darkness? But I already saw his future and he will surely fall for the darkness, thought the wisdom sage, feeling confused. Should I really keep believing the future? The Great Toad Sage's incident of not being able to read Bakurio's future shouldn't be taken lightly. That darkness shouldn't be taken lightly, thought the wisdom sage before he took a deep breath and made a decision unwise unlike his name. You are probably attracted to the natural treasure of our species, the Sky Stone. It's the same thing that created the clone you had to fight in your trial of self. However, I won't let you see it unless you fully master our sage arts. Bakurio was surprised by such a treasure existing, however the other sages were even more surprised than him as the smiling sage immediately stood up and yelled, "Wisdom sage, what are you doing? This is not what we agreed to. Indeed, this is beyond our agreement," said the perception sage coldly, while the crimson sage watched silently. In just an instant, all masks were dropped and the sages showed their true emotions towards Bakurio, who didn't care at all and was only thinking, a natural treasure, huh? Maybe I can finish my meditation advancement quest with it. Bakurio watched as the monkey sages kept arguing about why would the wisdom sage allowed him to approach their treasure and even told him about it in the first place. Wisdom sage, have you forgotten our purpose? Said the smiling sage with a face full of rage, and Bakurio couldn't help but notice anger building up in the wise sage's heart. Their purpose. Is there something they want to do with this treasure? Meanwhile, the wisdom sage stared coldly at the smiling sage and said, "You were born hundreds of years after me, you think you want to achieve our purpose more than me." The smiling sage felt a chill when he stared at the wisdom sage's eyes, and he felt as if his soul was about to be plucked from his body, so he hurriedly looked away. "Enough, you two, do not embarrass yourselves any further in front of an outsider," said the crimson sage that had been silent all this while. Hearing this, they finally calmed down and the wisdom sage said, "Bakurio-kun will naturally earn the right to know about our treasure when he become a sage. I didn't break any agreements. Does anyone here believe he can't master our sage arts?" The room fell silent since no one was able to disagree with the wisdom sage, as they already witnessed firsthand Bakurio's enormous talent. "Fine. But if he taints our treasure with his darkness, you will be responsible for it," yelled the smiling sage before he left while glaring at Bakurio. "It seems like they are wary of me because I used my darkness. Are these monkeys knowledgeable about the darkness?" thought Bakurio curiously, but the wisdom sage soon interrupted him and he decided to ask him later. "Bakurio-kun, our sage art is a little bit similar to the tortoise arts, as it allows you to materialize your chakra into a solid object. However, instead of a round shield, our sage arts allow you to create an almost unbreakable staff." After saying this, the wisdom sage made a demonstration for Bakurio and the latter instantly analyzed it to the best of his abilities using his advanced Sharingan before he sat down cross-legged and started manipulating the nature's chakra in the shrine just as the wisdom sage did, and the three monkey sages still present stared at him in astonishment. Will he really learn our sage art just by seeing it once? They thought, although they didn't realize that Bakurio was frowning slightly since he found it similar to staff made by the truth-seeking balls. In front of their eyes, the unbelievable quickly happened as a black pole staff appeared in Bakurio's hand. His hair got a little bit bushier as well and his muscles increased in volume. This was the monkey sage's transformation at its basic form. He also gained a small tail made of chakra which he can move freely just like an arm or a leg. "This isn't that bad," muttered Bakurio, enjoying the feeling of this transformation which he worked very hard to attain, and the notification from the system that told him he learned it made him nod in happiness. "Finally, I gathered all 6 sage arts," thought Bakurio happily before he sat down again in a meditative pose and started leveling up this sage transformation to its highest level. His hair kept getting bushier and his muscles bigger, however the most important thing was the pole staff in his hand that kept getting thicker and longer, and so was his tail. After a week like that, his monkey sage transformation reached level 100. During this time, the monkey sages would come and visit to see his progress, and each day that passes they become more and more shocked by the monstrosity of a kid in front of them. Meanwhile, after reaching level 100, Bakurio realized something. I can actually shape the staff into another weapon. Maybe I can fuse it with my sword to make it stronger, thought Bakurio, and decided to test it later before he turned his attention to the wisdom sage and said, "Can I see the natural treasure you spoke of? You really can't stop to amaze me, young man. Yes, I will take you to it personally, but you are not allowed to harm or touch it," replied the wisdom sage while stroking his beard with a weird light in his eyes. "Don't worry, I have no bad intentions, I'm just curious," said Bakurio calmly. He indeed wasn't planning to build any enmity with these monkeys and just wanted to satisfy his curiosity. "Good," nodded the wisdom sage before he raised his hand, and Bakurio felt a weird fluctuation he found familiar. This was space manipulation, and it was much more advanced than Minato's. The space around them suddenly shifted, and Bakurio found himself inside a cave-like structure different from the majestic shrine he was just in. Then, he noticed that in front of him was a floating multicolored stone, and the feeling of attraction he was having almost burst out of his chest, but he quickly restrained it and observed the stone calmly. "What the hell is this?" asked Bakurio to the only being that could provide him with an answer. "This is the Sky Stone, the treasure of our race. It has the power to control the yin and yang." In fact, the Sage of Six Paths was inspired by this stone to create some of his arts. Bakurio's eyes widened in surprise. Control the yin and yang. That's the jutsu he used to split the 10 tails and created the other 9-tailed beasts with. So this is where he was enlightened for it, huh? Bakurio's interest in the stone immensely deepened, especially when he could also sense that it was hiding many mysteries thanks to his strong Sharingan. However, a notification suddenly appeared in front of him before he could analyze it any further. "Would you like to complete the advancement quest of the meditation mastery?" Bakurio's eyes narrowed slightly before he clicked yes, and just right after, the wisdom sage watched in astonishment as the multicolored energy of the sky stone moved on its own and washed over every inch of Bakurio's body to the point that he even floated off the ground as if he was ascending to a different realm. Just as this happened, a black blur moved at high speed and tried to kill Bakurio, but the wisdom sage blocked it mid-air with a frown on his face. "Smiling sage, what do you think you are doing? I knew this kid was after our stone. How could you let him use it so carelessly? We don't even know what he's doing," replied the smiling sage, whose claws almost ripped Bakurio apart. "Leave," said the wisdom sage, not wanting to bother with him before he sent him far from the mountain of flowers and fruits with his space power. "You damn fool, you will regret this decision," screamed the smiling sage, shaking the sea that he was sent to. Meanwhile, the wisdom sage turned his attention to the changes happening to Bakurio, and he couldn't help but frown. This is the same thing that happened to Hagoromo back then. It's as if his soul is evolving. After a whole day had passed, Bakurio ended up absorbing so much energy from the stone to the point that it dimmed slightly, and the wisdom sage realized that it would take a while for it to recharge itself. Meanwhile, Bakurio opened his eyes calmly, and had a pattern that the wisdom sage never saw before. However, he recognized it as none other than the famous eternal Mangekyo Sharingan of the Uchiha clan. This kid, he has actually awakened this terrifying eye. The wisdom sage was truly astonished, but Bakurio was even more perplexed than him as he stared at the bunch of notifications that appeared in front of him. While enveloped by the multicolored light, memories started flashing in front of Bakurio's eyes, including all of his past and current life, and it brought a sad nostalgia to his heart. But he could see that a certain part of his soul felt glad that he lived a selfless life, although an unhappy one. Then, he felt his old image staring at him. He was familiar with those cold, empty eyes that greeted him every time he stared into a mirror, a face he rarely shows to outsiders. Then, that image's appearance slowly transformed into his own during this world in all of his stages of life before its eyes transformed into his Mangekyo Sharingan, and they stared silently at each other before they merged together. The moment that happened, Bakurio felt as if his soul was put into the most comfortable spring water, as a sense of relaxation filled him, and it even filled some of the emptiness inside of his heart. However, this still didn't stop him from being aware of what was happening around his body, so he noticed the deadly attack of the smiling sage that was stopped by the wisdom sage. Congratulations host, your mastery meditation level 100 has advanced to the mastery enlightened level 1. Congratulations host, your Mangekyo Sharingan has advanced to eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. You have gained plus 100% to the control of all eye powers and won't face any adverse effects such as blindness from using your powers anymore, and the chakra consumption is also significantly lower. Congratulations host. You have absorbed a very strong will and your Susanoo level 100 has advanced into Giant Susanoo level 1. Congratulations host. Your soul has advanced into a higher form and can now survive even if the body is destroyed. Spirit plus 1000. What's going on? Thought Bakurio before using a water jutsu to create a mirror and stare at his own appearance and noticed the new pattern in his eyes, confirming that it was indeed the Mangekyo Sharingan. He also felt as if he was reborn and full of power, plus 1000 increase to my spirit. This is crazy. But I can understand these rewards. What I can't understand is my Mangekyo Sharingan and Susanoo evolving. To evolve the Susanoo, Bakurio was required to strengthen his will. This concept alone was difficult to understand, not to mention finding a way to make it stronger. As for his Mangekyo Sharingan, he needed to have a Mangekyo Sharingan from a blood-related family member and merge it with his own. However, he didn't have any bloodline members, so he was honestly thinking of maybe cloning himself in the future just to get another pair of eyes. But now he was removed from all the hassle while enjoying the rewards. That image that merged with me, it reminds me of the perfect clone that fought me during the trial of self. Is it possible that this stone was able to perfectly copy me to the point that having that image merge with me was the same as transplanting a pair of eyes from a close family member? The fulfillment of my Susanoo's quest is probably from it, as well as it probably doubled my will. What an amazing treasure and opportunity I had gotten. I need to thank this wisdom sage, and kill the other one, thought Bakurio before he turned his attention to his last reward. Enlightened level 1. Host can always keep a state of enlightenment that helps him understand the laws of the world and would passively increase his spirit without needing to train. At level 1 equals plus 0.1 to spirit per day. Amazing. With this mastery alone, if I ever become an immortal, I can reach invincibility just by lying on bed all the time. After Bakurio finished checking all of his gains, he turned his attention to the wisdom sage and said, "Thank you, today's favor, I won't forget it. If you have anything you need help in, you can call me at any time." The wisdom sage nodded at him with an awkward smile and said, "I do have a favor to ask, but can you please promise me first that you won't kill the smiling sage?" "That I can't promise," said Bakurio coldly, which brought a frown to the wisdom sage's face as Bakurio suddenly said, "If you require 4 sages to whatever purpose you want to achieve, why not train Kuma? He's more fitting of the title smiling sage than that lunatic. At least Kuma always smiles from the heart." "I know, but it would take a while for him to reach the level of Kudai," said the wisdom sage, but Bakurio shook his head at him and said, "No, he can easily reach the same level and even surpass him. The only reason he's stuck at his current level is because someone cast a seal on him." This is what Bakurio discovered when using appraisal on Kuma. After all, he got used to the idea of using appraisal on any new targets he meets. Hearing Bakurio's words, the wisdom sage's eyes flicked with a dangerous light before he said, "Are you sure?" "Oh, he seems to believe me. Does he have prior knowledge about this?" thought Bakurio before nodding at the wisdom sage, who instantly teleported them back to the sacred shrine, and right after that, he waved his hand again and summoned Kuma over to inspect him. "What are you doing, wisdom sage?" asked the perception sage, since he could feel that the air around the wisdom sage wasn't as calm as it used to be. It was so turbulent, as if a volcano was about to erupt. Light shined from the eyes of the wisdom sage that scanned the very soul of Kuma before he noticed a few sneaky seals traveling along his chakra channels, which made them very hard to detect, and their purpose was to hinder him from achieving a true sage level of power. "What's going on, Endai?" the Crimson Sage asked while calling the wisdom sage with his real name after seeing the cold look in his eyes. He knew that this matter wasn't going to end well. Then out of the blue, the wisdom sage stared at Kuma's eyes and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't notice your condition fast enough, but I will make sure to make him pay for this." Kuma's eyes widened slightly before he shot the wisdom sage a bright smile and said, "I already know about the seals." Seeing his smile, Endai's face froze, and he asked absent-mindedly, "Why didn't you inform us then?" Kuma rubbed the back of his head awkwardly before he said, "I didn't want to cause the elders too much trouble." Endai's heart shook slightly, and he couldn't help but remember Bakurio telling him how great Kuma's potential was, and he felt incompetent for not realizing such a thing was happening for so long under his nose. A sage actually hindered the progress of one of their clansmen on purpose. When Shudai and Rendai understood what was going on, they also felt an unprecedented level of rage, especially when coupled with Kuma's innocent behavior. And through all of this, Kudai, who was rushing back to the mountain of flowers and fruits in anger, didn't realize that he was rushing to his doom like a moth to the flames. Now it's going to be easier to get rid of that monkey, thought Bakurio coldly. He wouldn't have bothered if that idiot didn't provoke him, but now it was a whole different matter. How is this possible? Why would he do such a thing? Asked Shudai, still finding the situation unbelievable, and Bakurio as well was curious about this, so he decided to collect as much information as possible. I already suspected that he was hiding something. In fact, I already knew that our fall would be from someone on our side betraying us, but I never expected that it would be from one of the four of us. How disappointing. We really failed our ancestors, replied Endai with a sigh, and he even seemed like he aged for a little bit. What's going on here? What does he mean by their fall? Wondered Bakurio, and seeing his clueless look as well as Kuma's, Endai's decided to tell them what was going on. This is a secret that only those who reach the highest mastery in our sage arts are allowed to learn about, and you two can't tell anyone outside of this place once you hear it, understood? Bakurio and Kuma nodded at him, and seeing their curious looks, Endai let out a tired sigh and began telling them about a story of how this world came to be. Long ago, far before I was even born, there existed a world ruled by multiple races of beasts. That world was in no way peaceful, as the beasts mostly lived following the law of nature, however at least they were free. This is probably the beast world that Genjutsu made me go through to survive. Thought Bakurio as he continued listening to the wisdom sage. That world had the ability to give birth to sentient beasts, which is how the current sage clans of this world gained their wisdom. However, there were more than 6 clans, and they each had their own strengths and weaknesses. But one clan in particular reigned supreme as the overlords of that world, and that clan is the Dragon Clan. Whether it's in skill, body, or spirit, they were far above the other clans, and it would take the combination of many beasts of the same rank just to face one dragon. I really don't like where this is going, thought Bakurio, who witnessed firsthand the terrifying presence of one of those dragons. That balance of power went on for ages, until it was suddenly broken when darkness fell from the sky, and its target was none other than the strongest clan. The dragons. The beasts of old thought that it was a good opportunity to weaken the dragons and take their place as overlords. However, they realized too late how unwise this decision was, as the dragons were quickly defeated and the darkness took control of them. Then it used them to overwhelm the other races, and this time it became even easier because the dragons were strengthened by that darkness. This is similar to the effect of dark chakra. Bakurio and Kuma remained silent, and the former felt a chill since he already realized that this darkness was probably his enemy. The different beast clans were quickly defeated and enslaved one after the other, but in the end, thanks to our Sky Stone, my clan was able to open a portal that sent us to this world along with whatever beasts that could have made it. Although they didn't realize at the time that they were already tainted somehow by the darkness, and it ended up following them to this world as well. Bakurio was left speechless after hearing all of this, and he couldn't help but ask, how come nature's chakra takes the form of you beasts then specifically? The wisdom sage simply shrugged and said, throughout our time staying here, our bodies developed to accommodate the nature's chakra of the sacred grounds we picked as our residence, and the nature's chakra also started to transform and took some of our properties. In reality, the first nature chakra was the same type of chakra the Sage of 6 Paths was able to achieve. This answered many of the questions Bakurio had regarding the weird relation between these animals and nature chakra, and seeing him remain silent, the wisdom sage continued his story. We never knew where that darkness had originated, but what we do know is that although it left us be, it didn't leave the people of this world, and wars soon after started all around the globe for the pettiest of reasons. As for our clans, they tried to accumulate as much strength as possible to face the overwhelming attack of darkness. Although its schemes went far beyond our expectations, as it also was gather forces we didn't know existed in this world. What do you mean? Asked Bakurio, and the wisdom sage's eyes flickered slightly and said, the moment it came to this world, that darkness started manipulating certain talented people and gave them enough strength to conquer both the pure lands where the souls of the dead reside as well as hell where souls are judged, and there's also the demon's land. All of these lands are now in the hands of that darkness, and the reason the Hound Sage keeps defending the gate of hell tirelessly is that his own childhood friend is now the master of hell. She entered hell to gain strength and asked the Hound Sage to wait for her outside, and he kept that promise throughout the ages, waiting for her return one day, but she never did. Bakurio's heart shook slightly at the dedication of the Hound Sage, and he recalled that he didn't have a seed of darkness, showing just how clean his heart is despite the passage of time. However, he noticed that these monkeys all had a seed of darkness other than the Wisdom Sage, and they didn't seem to realize its existence. He also remembered the woman he saw in hell who almost killed him with one glance and knew that the Wisdom Sage was telling the truth, so why do you need Kudai? Our only chance in winning or at least escape that darkness is through the Sky Stone, and to use it we need the cooperation of 4 sages, one from each clan, replied the Wisdom Sage, and Bakurio finally had a clear picture of the situation. So, we are not from this world? Asked Kuma curiously, and Shudai nodded at him silently. Oh, this is amazing, I can't wait to be at this darkness and return back to our world. I hope there are better fruits to eat there, ha 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 ha. Kuma's positiveness affected the rest and they felt a little bit of the weight over their hearts fading. But Bakurio instantly put some cold water over their hearts once more as he said, unfortunately, you can never escape that darkness because it already resides deeply in your hearts, and probably already knows all of your secrets. Endai's heart shook and he immediately said, what do you mean? And Bakurio let out a sigh and said, why do you think Hashirama Senju died? Endai fell silent and it was the cold Rendai that answered, wasn't it because he rushed carelessly into the demon realm? So that's where Hashirama went, huh? Good to know, thought Bakurio before he responded. No, far from that, in fact he returned back home to Konoha only slightly injured. But after leaving a few warnings, he ended his life out of his own accord. Endai's pupils shrunk slightly and he couldn't help but put his hand over his heart, and Bakurio calmly nodded at him and said, that's right, he realized that darkness was already in his heart, so he decided to kill himself before it could take control over his body. Impossible, exclaimed Shudai, who had an idea about how strong and good-natured Hashirama was, and he couldn't help but worry, but a huge monkey with long arms suddenly rushed into the shrine and interrupted them while yelling, Endai. You better not stop me this time or I will kill you as well. He has already lost his sanity, thought Endai, and with a regretful look on his face, he conjured a space blade and separated Kudai's head from his body. Good night, little brother, muttered the Wisdom Sage while everyone stared at him in shock and his terrifying powers. This is the difference in strength between people at the same rank when they control different powers. The Wisdom Sage's cold words echoed throughout the halls of the shrine as the head of the smiling sage fell to the floor with an empty look in its eyes. Did Kudai really die just like that? Muttered Shudai with a shocked look on his face. Meanwhile, the Wisdom Sage turned to the 4 statues protecting their shrine that were inhabited by their ancestors' spirits and started praying for their brother that fell to the darkness. The other monkeys overcame their shock and turned around to pray for him, including Kuma that suffered a lot in silence because of Kudai. However, Bakurio remained vigilant and only pretended to mimic the monkeys as he knew better than them how terrifying a wielder of dark chakra could be. And indeed, just as the others lost their focus for a split second, Kudai showed his true intentions as dark chakra gushed out from his wounds and connected his head and body rapidly before claws extended from his body, which are his sage weapon, and he rushed to stab his true target. Endai the Wisdom Sage, I finally got you, thought Kudai as his claws were only inches away from Endai's back when a dark giant hand appeared in front of him and blocked his hand, followed by multiple dark chains that tried to catch him, but he avoided all of them skillfully. He's far stronger than what he's showing, thought Bakurio while looking at the slight scratch marks that appeared on his perfect Suzanu's armored hand. The other monkeys turned hurriedly after hearing the sound of the clash, only to see that Endai survived a grim fate thanks to Bakurio's help. How are you still alive? Asked Shudai, but Endai and Rendai, who were both calculative people, instantly understood what was going on. You bastard, you actually completely fell to darkness, yelled the usually calm Rendai with a terrifying killing intent flowing from his body as a weird aura started accumulating around him like invisible waves. Kudai smiled wickedly at them and said, ha, I only did the inevitable. You 3 don't know the power that darkness holds, and in no time you will all follow in my footsteps, although forcefully. You bastard actually ruined our ancestors' aspirations for freedom just out of fear. Asked Endai with a distraught look on his face, and even the status they were just praying to started shaking suddenly at such devastating news. You can keep holding on to your traditions all you want, however since I'm exposed today, none of you should dream of leaving this place alive, including you, human brat, replied Kudai with a weird confidence that surprised the other sages, and Kuma couldn't help but ask him curiously, what makes you so confident? Elder Endai had just beheaded you, didn't he? Kudai froze slightly at the unexpected question. I let him do it to take him by surprise, don't you understand tactics? Kuma seemed genuinely surprised as he replied, "AAA, that's underhanded, yay right genius, what did you expect from someone that sealed your chakra channels just so you don't take his position?" Thought Bakurio before he asked, "Did you reveal your true intentions because I approached the Sky Stone? You and your master seem to value it a lot, don't you?" Kudai's eyes narrowed slightly at Bakurio's question before he said, "It doesn't matter the reason why." "Indeed, die," said Endai before he conjured another space blade and launched it at Kudai. However this time, the latter easily dodged it before he said, "I will show you what kind of power you are missing on." Then a terrifying amount of dark chakra started enhancing his body up to its limits and even far beyond. And then an even more terrifying sage chakra enhanced his body even further now that his capacity for it was stronger. Watch closely, this is the greatness of dark chakra, ha 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 ha. Kudai laughed loudly as he felt strength coursing through his body and staring down at the monkey sages that usually were of similar size to him. As I expected, he can't merge dark chakra with sage chakra as well, so he ends up using them together instead, which is pretty good in its own way if you want to risk overloading your body like an idiot. Thought Bakurio. Begone, said the wisdom sage and attempted to teleport Kudai away. Like he did inside the Sky Stone chamber, but a weird amulet suddenly lit up on his neck and dispelled the space power. Impossible, where did you get such a treasure? Asked Endai in horror, and Kudai replied with a bigger smirk, you think you are the only one that can use space power. You are underestimating the followers of darkness. Then he rushed with a terrifying speed at Kuma, wanting to eliminate the weakest link first. Die. Stupid monkey. Kuma saw the shadow of death rushing at him, but Bakurio instantly stood in front of him to block for him as he said, the only one stupid here is you, Yomi no Kuni. Four thick chains came out of nowhere and created a net that blocked any path of advancing for Kudai. To hell with your weird chains, he said before he coated his claws with dark chakra and slashed at the chains, but the only result was that his claws got corroded, so he immediately retreated since the chains were trying to surround him. Where are you going? Said the Crimson Sage as he instantly appeared behind him and launched a fist made of fire at him that had a few dark spots on it. But Kudai quickly defended by creating a sphere from dark chakra and counter-attacked by sending Shudai flying with his huge tail. Meanwhile, Rendai's 4 ears kept flickering as a weird aura gushed from his body and covered Kudai. This was a terrifying genjutsu that used sound as a conductor, unlike the Sharingan that used sight. However, it had absolutely no effect on Kudai as he kept fighting without any pause against Endai and Bakurio. Not bad, you guys indeed are strong, but this is not enough to save you today, said Kudai before he finally unleashed one of his trump cards. Dark Style. Dark Domain Jutsu. Suddenly, all light was drained from their surroundings and Bakurio and the monkeys lost all of their senses, or at least this was what this domain intended to do. However, Endai was still able to feel things thanks to his space affinity, while Rendai's 4 ears also gave him a certain sixth sense to sense things, and Bakurio also had his own way. The only ones that were affected by this were Shudai and Kuma. The former instantly covered himself with his red and black fire while Kuma simply stood there warily not knowing what to do. And this time Kudai's target was Shudai, wanting to eliminate the threat of his dark flames that were actually a weak form of blaze release. Or in other words, Amaterasu. Die, thought Kudai, and his nails easily went through the veil of flames and penetrated deeply into the flesh of Shudai. However, before he could react, that Shudai exploded into flames and he was hit by it, which forced him to discard any pieces of flesh touched by the dark spots. TCH, how annoying, he thought as the real Shudai appeared from under Bakurio's Susanoo. These sages all lived for thousands of years, so none of them was easy to deal with, and this fight was definitely going to be hard for Kudai. Fine then, Let's see how you deal with attacks from a distance, muttered Kudai before he started attacking with terrifying dark spheres, each holding the power of a small-tailed beast bomb. Bakurio grabbed the monkeys and defended them with his Susanoo in the hope for one of them to find a solution out of this weird jutsu, since he was focusing on analyzing instead to replicate it, and he didn't have to wait for long as Endai used his space power and successfully dispersed the darkness. What are you going to do now? Bakurio taunted, although his real intentions were only known to him as his pupils rotated silently. Kudai's smile widened as he said eerily, "You think I didn't expect this much retaliation?" Then, a terrifying amount of dark chakra started gushing from his body as he said, "Dark possession." Bakurio's eyes narrowed. As he noticed the seed that was dormant all this time inside of Kudai's heart suddenly broke and merged with his body completely, then he started transforming in front of them into a terrifying monstrosity. He became a giant monkey with 6 arms and 3 heads that each had a varying number of horns, and he clearly lost all of his sanity as his eyes turned pupilless and blood red in color. "Be careful, he's far stronger than before," said Bakurio and was about to set up a few defenses, but suddenly, Endai stepped in front of them and said with a calm look on his face, "We already involved you too much in this mess, leave the rest to me." Bakurio was surprised. After all, this new monstrosity Kudai had transformed into was already at the medium super cage level and was only getting higher and higher in terms of strength. How's he planning to fight such a monster? Thought Bakurio, but he soon got his answer as Endai took a deep breath and clasped his hands together and a golden aura manifested between his hands. Is this the same arts used by the Buddhists of the Temple of Fire? Bakurio's eyes widened as he watched in surprise as a huge golden statue appeared in front of them. It had thousands of hands and its size even matched his perfect Susanoo before it evolved. Amazing, thought Bakurio as he watched the dark and golden giants fighting an epic battle. However, even with this crazy show of strength, the wisdom sage still failed to win, so he unleashed one of his special attacks. Space Palm. One of the hands of the status suddenly disappeared in a portal and appeared right on top of Kudai's 3 heads and smashed him into the floor and held him in place as the rest of the 1000 palms smashed repeatedly on his body and kept crushing it. However, he was also regenerating at a rapid speed, so Shudai made his move as well. Blaze Release. Infernal Wave. A huge wave of dark flames left Shudai's mouth and covered Kudai's body, hindering him from recovering any further. They weren't holding anything back anymore, and not long after, Rendai also joined the fight, creating many clones of the 3 of them to confuse Kudai, and at one point he even created a reflection of Kudai that had 50% of his power. This fight went on for 3 days, and in the end, the 3 monkeys were completely exhausted. However, they succeeded in taking down Kudai. "Even if you defeat me today, you won't escape your fate," he said while laying in a pool of dark blood as dark flames kept eating at his body until he was completely incinerated and left behind nothing but dust. Endai, Shudai, and Rendai instantly collapsed to the floor, exhausted from overexerting themselves beyond their limits. The hardest thing during this fight was Kudai's unhuman regeneration, which forced them to kill him multiple times to be completely sure they got rid of him. One day later, Bakurio visited the injured monkeys inside their shrine once more and said, "I'm sure you have many questions." Endai nodded silently and asked, "How did that darkness infiltrate our hearts, and even the heart of someone like Hashirama?" Bakurio pondered slightly before he said, "I'm not sure how the process happens, but I'm pretty sure Hashirama didn't have it until after his fight with Madara. He probably had too many regrets inside of his heart for killing his friend, and the darkness found a hole to sneak into his heart." "I see. Can you see it?" asked Endai while pointing at Bakurio's now normal Sharingan eyes, and the latter calmly nodded. "I can. In fact, I'm going to initiate my plan soon," said Bakurio, and Endai was slightly surprised before he asked, "What plan?" "Something that required this," said Bakurio before the aura around him strengthened multiple times before he gained a flow of pure white chakra covering his body, but there didn't seem to be any other changes to his body. However, the monkeys felt otherwise. It was as if a giant was standing in front of them. This was the 6 paths chakra mode that Bakurio achieved during the time the monkeys were fighting after merging all 6 sage arts, and they couldn't help but feel shocked when they sensed the tremendous pressure emanating from him. You actually achieved this state?" Asked Endai in shock, and Bakurio calmly nodded as he remembered the notification he received yesterday. Congratulations host. You have learned 6 Paths Chakra Mode, 6 Path Chakra Mode level 30. All attributes plus 900. Greatly enhances the power of all jutsu. Once I reach level 100, all my attributes would be enhanced by 3,000, but the real increase is actually in the enhancement to any jutsu I use, including dojutsu. Which is what I need for my plans. Yes, although I still haven't mastered it fully, replied Bakurio to the inquiry of the wisdom sage, who then asked, what do you plan to do? I can't tell you, that darkness has ears all around after all. However, I will require your help once Kuma's seal is broken and reaches your level of power, replied Bakurio, and the monkeys agreed with his worries and nodded at him, accepting his request before they watched as he left calmly, since he didn't have anything more to do in their sacred ground. Endai, can we really trust him? He also wields dark chakra in the end? Asked Rendai coldly, and Endai couldn't help but frown before he replied. I don't know. I don't trust my previous visions anymore, and I feel like this kid is our only chance in winning, so I decided to make a bet. A bet? Asked Rendai, and Endai nodded calmly and said, only someone who can wield the darkness in their hearts will be able to face the descent of that monstrosity. This is what our ancestors said, and this is what this kid had showed so far. Rendai fell silent for a bit before he nodded and turned to Kuma. Be prepared for the training that awaits you. Kuma stared at the injured Shudai that couldn't even speak from the damage caused to him by the blaze release and nodded with a smile. I will do my best. How long has it been? Wondered Bakurio as he arrived back at Konoha. The village seemed a little bit more prosperous, with kids running and playing all around the place, however only he could sense the darkness lurking in the dark. Then he arrived in front of his house and entered while saying, I'm home, and Naruto, who was fighting with Kurama on the couch, suddenly froze and turned to stare at the source of the sound, only to see Bakurio sitting by the door, and his eyes couldn't help but water up as he jumped at him and gave him a bear hug while barely holding his tears. Bakurio. Where have you been all this time? Asked Naruto while crying silently, although Bakurio could clearly feel his shoulder getting wet as he said with a smile. Sorry. I was busy with so many things. I became a ninja student, you know. Sniff sniff, asked Naruto, and Bakurio nodded at him with a smile and said, I know, I heard you are a very amazing student. I can't to see you beat Minato's and Itachi's records. I will. Said Naruto confidently before the sound of footsteps echoed from the room upstairs, and Kushina and Minato both came down to greet Bakurio. Welcome home, Bakurio-kun, said Kushina while giving him a hug before she observed him closely and said in surprise, you grew up once more. Bakurio smiled awkwardly before he turned to Minato. Minato. It seems like I'm going to end into a giant. Minato chuckled slightly and responded with a smile. As long as that giant is still our Bakurio, it doesn't matter. Naruto didn't catch on to the meaning behind these words. But the perceptive Bakurio could already tell that they noticed something from their sad smiles. It was soon time to make a move. They still didn't find a solution, huh? Muttered Bakurio after hanging up from a call with Orochimaru. Well, I can't wait for too long. The situation might change in an unexpected direction at any time, he thought, and went to train his new 6 Paths Chakra Mode and other powers. Bakurio's goal was straightforward, and it was to destroy all the dark seeds in the world and deal with the power behind them. However, achieving this goal was far from simple. In fact, just destroying all the dark seeds in the world was close to impossible. So, he came up with a plan that was inspired by none other than the most fearsome genjutsu in this world, the infinite Tsukuyomi. That genjutsu could use the moon as a conductor to reach the whole globe and affect every single being, and Bakurio planned to use this same conductor, although with the purpose of casting a different ability, his high Jikaninki. However, doing this is far from easy, and his normal Jikaninki alone wasn't strong enough for the task, so he had to make it evolve, and to make it even stronger, he was planning to empower it with 6 Paths Chakra. Not to mention he had to fight the possible retaliation of the darkness, which is why he had to gather every single bit of strength possible. Now, he was ready. All he was lacking was the chakra to cast this jutsu, which will be enormous, and although his spirit was stronger and his chakra reserves increased, it didn't mean that he had a high amount of chakra, as other factors play a role in this, mainly the bloodline and the level of chakra talent, because they work as multipliers for the chakra. For example, his attributes to chakra multiplier was 4, and it was all thanks to his chakra master talent. But if he had a bloodline that increased chakra as well like the Uzumaki or the Senju, he would gain another multiplier that would increase his chakra even further and make it at least 10 times larger, a difference that simply increasing his spirit can't fix. But Orochimaru has yet to find a solution for merging his current bloodline with Hashirama's. I will just have to do it the forceful way, thought Bakurio as he focused on training his abilities as much as possible, and soon 3 months passed. Other than training, the situation was quite peaceful inside the village. Bakurio was offered to teach in the ninja academy but he declined since he wanted to focus wholeheartedly on his training. However, he started to spend a lot of time with Naruto and Sasuke and he would help in their training whenever he could. This day however, something interrupted his daily training routine and it was none other than Enma, who delivered a message to him from Endai. Bakurio-kun, Kuma's talent was surprisingly terrifying and he already reached our level in terms of strength. We are ready if you need our help. Oh. It seems like I didn't misjudge him, muttered Bakurio, and Enma couldn't help but sigh and said, I feel embarrassed when I think that we are from the same generation yet he's already way ahead of me. Well, he had his hardships to deal with and you had yours. Don't think too much into it, replied Bakurio, and Enma nodded silently before Bakurio said, Please tell Endai that I would love it if he could come tomorrow. Enma gulped nervously and asked, Are you sure? Bakurio nodded calmly at him before his eyes flashed with a bloody light. He prepared so much just for this moment, how can he not be ready? After Enma left, Bakurio went to inform Fugaku, Mukai, and Minato that tomorrow was the day they make their move. He already told them about the seeds of darkness during the past 3 months, which shocked them greatly, and they accepted Bakurio's plan to deal with this huge threat. The next day, in front of a huge clearing in the Land of Fire, a group of extremely powerful people gathered together, all with the purpose to protect Bakurio while casting the jutsu. This group included Jiraiya, Tsunade, Minato, Fugaku, Mukai, Hiruzen, Hiashi, the 4 monkey sages, which now included Kuma as well as Rendai, who was also a sage, the black tortoise sage invited by Endai, and the hound sage himself. There was also a huge army of Konoha's elite. Unfortunately, both Kakashi and Guy couldn't make it as they are still training their sage arts in their respective holy grounds. In the middle of all these powerhouses, Bakurio stood there silently while staring at the moon before he said to the fox on his shoulder, Kurama, if you feel like you are going to run out of chakra, just tell me and I will feed you one of my chakra rejuvenating pills, okay? Don't worry, replied Kurama, whose task was to provide Bakurio with enough chakra to cast his jutsu. Good. Bakurio cast one last look at the terrifying powerhouses and locked eyes briefly with the smirking Mukai before he closed his eyes slightly and reopened them abruptly, and they had the pattern of his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Some people in the crowd gasped at his eyes, especially those from the Uchiha clan like Itachi and Shisui, but Bakurio ignored them. Then, he entered into his 6 paths chakra mode and merged his chakra with Kurama's chakra, which surprisingly went smoothly. Then a silent whisper echoed from his mouth, endless Jikaninki. Terrifying chakra coursed through Bakurio's strong body and rushed into his right eye that reflected the full moon in the sky. Then, his eye slowly appeared on the moon, startling the people of this world and causing a commotion all over the globe, whether they were hidden organizations or hidden villages or just normal countries. One soul that was sealed inside the moon felt a formless energy permeating her seal, but it was different from the energy of her infinite Tsukuyomi, which she was waiting to use to travel back to whatever body Black Zetsu prepared for her. However, she felt this energy was familiar and decided it was better than waiting here any longer with her fading soul, so she followed that energy to its source. However, just as she touched it, she felt something disappear from her soul as if a curse was removed from it, making her feel free. What's going on? Thought Kagaya, before she hastened her travel, wanting to ask whoever was using this jutsu for an explanation. Meanwhile, Bakurio had to eat multiple chakra recovery potions and pills, and so did Kurama, who was only a young half currently, but not long after, they achieved their purpose and the moon got completely saturated before the light that fell from it changed. It no longer was the normal pure light of the moon. Instead, it now has the effect of his high Jikaninki, and soon, that light penetrated through the hearts of every single animal and human in the world and erased any dark seed they might have. In Iowa, Onoki suddenly stared at the change in the moon and couldn't help but hold his heart tightly. Why do I not feel as much hate towards Konoha? Madara, you are long dead. In the village hidden in the rain, Nagato stared at the moon and thought, was it really worth it to try to achieve peace by killing people? In another hidden location, Obito stared at the moon in shock since this resembled the plan of Madara, and he also felt something fading from his heart and making it lighter as he thought, was getting revenge against the world truly the right path? So many people started to second guess their decisions, and it wasn't just strong ninja. Normal families that didn't get along anymore, or friends that turned into enemies. The whole world suddenly felt different. And this wasn't all, because Bakurio's second purpose was to remove all the negative energy he saw floating to the sky through his eye of truth, and this was similar to a large-scale cleansing of the world. Something that didn't go unnoticed by the entity that worked for ages to turn the world into this state. Minato observed how some of the ninjas surrounding him seemed to have felt different, and they started acting as if a huge burden was removed from their hearts, which brought a smile to his face. It seems like Bakurio's plan worked, he thought while noticing that Bakurio suddenly closed his eyes for some reason. But before he could contemplate what was happening to Bakurio, he suddenly felt a disturbance in the space of the area and a chill engulfed his heart as he immediately ordered, "Be careful. Something is coming." Fugaku and the other ninja were surprised, but they trusted in his judgment and immediately put up their guard. One Jonin from the Inuzuka clan couldn't help but grin and say, "What are we scared of? We have so many cage-level ninja here." However, a rift soon opened in space and a man walked from it. He had red-orange hair and green eyes that shined with an eerie light, and behind him followed the Death Reaper. "Who are you?" asked Fugaku while feeling his instincts screaming at him to run away. The man glanced at Fugaku calmly and said, "My name." He couldn't help but wonder how long was it since he needed to say his name in this world before he said, "I was once called Azumo, who's this guy? Why's the Death Reaper following behind him?" Thought Minato before he instantly activated his Jinchuriki transformation and said, "What's your purpose here?" Azumo stared at Minato's transformation with an eerie calm before he pointed at Bakurio and said, "I will take him with me, do you plan to stop me?" "I'm sorry, but we can't let you take that brat," said Jiraiya as he entered into Sage mode with the help of his frog masters. "I see, you can die then," replied Azumo before a terrifying aura of death gushed from his body similar to Bakurio's and a giant hand formed from it and slammed into the crowd. "Don't let that hand touch you," yelled Endai, and the ninjas instantly cast all kinds of jutsu to stop that hand. However, no matter what they threw at it, it was as if they were throwing small pebbles at an abyss. And eventually, Minato interfered and created a giant Rasengan which he slammed into the hand, and it finally had an effect and stooped it in its tracks. Minato's eyes flickered slightly before he yelled, "Only Sage-empowered attack works against his power." Azumo smiled slightly and said, "Not bad, how about you deal with this?" With a wave of his hand, 10 black meteors appeared into the air and rushed at the crowd. But a voice suddenly echoed from behind Azumo, surprising him slightly. "Don't underestimate us." It was Fugaku who appeared behind him using his Mangekyo ability and tried to slash him with his kunai, but Azumo dodged him at the last second, but multiple attacks soon followed by the other ninja as well. Meanwhile, Minato created 10 red chakra hands from Kurama's chakra, and with each, he created a tailed beast bomb which he sent at the 10 meteors and destroyed them before he took out 10s of his special kunai and sent them to the air all around Azumo while exchanging a look with Shisui at the same time. Azumo was distracted by the countless attacks heading his way, which were blocked by a dark shield made of the same energy that created the palm and the meteors, and it left him unscathed, and he seemed relaxed throughout the ordeal until Minato suddenly appeared in front of him from one of the kunai that were near him with Shisui in his hands, and he couldn't help but lock eyes with the weird eyes of the kid. "Koto Amatsukami," muttered Shisui in his head, and Izumo's eyes widened slightly as Fugaku yelled, "Now! Attack!" while he's still immobilized. But to their terror, Azumo smirked slightly and said, "That was a dangerous one, it would have been risky if this was my real body." The heart of the onlookers shook, they were just fighting a clone all along. Ugly looks covered the faces of the ninjas, while Bakurio's eyes still remained closed for some reason, which further worried many people as he was unresponsive even when they talked to him. However, things soon turned even worse for these ninjas as another portal appeared above them, and this time it was a woman that came out of it. She had long white hair and red eyes, but the most striking feature she had was her horns. Azumo, why are you wasting your time with these people? Asked the woman to Azumo, and the latter smiled slightly and said, Amatsu, it's best to give them some hope that they can win before I crush them, otherwise it wouldn't be enjoyable. Amatsu chuckled slightly and said, as sadistic as ever, huh? But I don't like wasting my time. Before she turned her attention to the ninjas below her, and a red energy gushed from her body like a shockwave and rapidly passed through the ninjas, and they started falling slowly one after the other, leaving only those at the elite Jonin level standing. What just happened? Asked Fugaku in disbelief while staring at the hundreds of elites from his village that fell to the ground never to stand up again. Damn it, this is far worse than we thought, muttered Endai before he signaled to the other monkey sages to get into formation as he suddenly summoned none other than the Sky Stone, and under the cooperation of the four sages, they sealed Amatsu into a cage and yelled, we will take care of this one, quickly deal with the other one as soon as possible. Oh, that's the infamous Sky Stone. Not bad, but I need to take this kin now. Amatsu can get the stone on her own, said Azumo, who wasn't worried at all that his ally had just gotten sealed, and simply moved into Bakurio's direction. But suddenly a man blocked his way and asked with a smirk, where do you think you are going? Azumo observed the man in front of him, who had a Byakugan in his left eye, and simply sent a death blast at him to kill him. Mukai glared at Bakurio before he analyzed the blast and determined a weak spot in its structure, and calmly used his terrifying mastery of the gentle fist to split it in half. Azumo stared at Mukai with some appreciation and said, it seems like there are some talented people left in this world. Your level of taijutsu is quite impressive. Before he moved at unimaginable speed and instantly appeared in front of Mukai and kicked him in the stomach, sending him flying before he could even react. It has been a while since I tested my taijutsu, hopefully you won't disappoint me, Mukai. Yelled Minato while watching Mukai flying through the air at a rapid speed while smashing into multiple trees before stopping. Then Azumo continued to make his way toward Bakurio, and Kurama, who was standing on his shoulder, readied himself to make his move, but he suddenly stopped when a terrifying chakra blasted the area where Mukai has just crashed, and the people still standing only saw a silhouette moving at a terrifying speed and crashing at Azumo, sending him flying through many trees. Two people can play this game, buddy, said Mukai with a smirk. Mukai, muttered Minato in delight, and Mukai calmly nodded at Minato and said, leave this guy to me, you guys should deal with the rest of the trouble. Despite his show of confidence, only Mukai knew that if he didn't release his chakra fast enough to block Izumo's kick, he would have been dead by now. This was going to be a fight to the death, which is why he already opened all 7 gates directly. What do you mean? Asked Fugaku, but two presences suddenly became visible not far from them, and Kurama couldn't help but growl, especially when he sensed one of them. His animal instincts were screaming at him and telling him that an apex predator was approaching them. Thank you for listening, guys. See you in the next part.